All right, man, I got my main man, the legendary Steve Kim, in the building. Steve, you know, we had a lot of conversation as it relates to the sport of boxing. I do know that you kind of discussed it with some of the things that you've been seeing as of late. We had a discussion in the past where you said that, hey, you have come to the conclusion that you have seen your best best boxing that you're going to see. Can you please elaborate on that?
Yeah, you know, so I started covering this game in 1996. Really straight ahead, full time, about 98 to 99. Mm-hmm. So I'm at dinner with Doug Fisher and some other people that you've met.
Ring Magazine.
Phil Trainey's, yes. We're at Phil Trainey's restaurant. This is about a year and a half, 2 years ago. Me, Doug Fisher, a couple managers, trainers. I think Tom Wofford may have been there for that monthly boxing dinner that you went to last year with us.
Okay.
And we're kind of lamenting what was going on in the sport. And I told Doug, I said, Doug, you know, the thing is, we've been around a long time. We're the old heads now. That's just the way it is. And I said, Doug, I was thinking about this. I think we've already seen the best boxing we're ever going to see. Now, Coach, that doesn't mean I'm not going to, or me and you are never going to see another great boxer or more great fights or other good eras. But I said, Doug, think about it. We came in with Chavez, De La Hoya, then Pacquiao, then Mayweather, then Cotto, Roy Jones, the Klitschko's, Golovkin, and Canelo. He goes, now the current generation, and this is before any of them had ever fought each other, now the current generation is kind of symbolized by Tank, Devin, Ryan, Shakur, and Teofimo. And they don't fight as much. They don't take on the challenges. The business has completely changed. And when I got into this business, covering it, world-class fighters, Coach, were not only fighting better fights more often, they were just fighting more, period. So you got to see them. I would include James Toney among those guys that I really enjoyed covering. Even though I didn't really catch his super middleweight run, I still got to see him up close. Certainly having the chance to cover Manny Pacquiao very intimately the way I did was a great honor. The other thing is, Coach, this is another thing that I've written about. Think about this. Taking away Chocolatito against Estrada and Golovkin Canelo, where's our next great multi-fight rivalry? Where's the next Gaddy Ward? Where's the next Bo Holyfield, Ollie Frazier? Me and Doug, we were at every single fight of Barrero Morales. I was at 3 of the 4 fights, or 2 of the 4 fights of Israel Vasquez, Rafael Marquez. I was lucky enough to be at all 3 fights of Canelo Golovkin. So that's another facet, because the fighters fight so infrequently, where the fights don't get made soon enough. And I was talking about this with Tim Bradley over dinner a couple nights ago. Spence against Crawford should have been a multi-fight rivalry. Instead, we get it at the very tail end of each physical prime, or specifically really for Spence. So I'm kind of being realistic and pragmatic about it. Like, Coach, do you see it getting any better?
You know, that's a great question, because I didn't think about that until you mentioned it. Like, we're not getting the trilogies. Spence Crawford should have happened 2019, 18, 19.
And then 20.
And then
21
20.
or 23. Right. I mean, where are we getting the fights where, like, say what you want about Mayweather, but he had some rematches after some decisions that were questionable. And I'll be honest with you, this is going to surprise people. When people say Mayweather is to blame for how boxing is, I completely disagree. And I'll tell you why, Coach. He had 37 fights before he got to De La Hoya, so he put in real work. And to see these younger fighters who have about half the number of fights, half the number of achievements, complaining and already doing these fake retirements, I'm like, you know what? I'd rather go right back to pretty boy Floyd Mayweather. I'd take that in a heartbeat, Coach.
But see, this is the problem that I have with it, Steve. Like, it seems to me they want to be Money Mayweather, but they want the Money Mayweather, but they don't want to go through the pretty boy Floyd phase.
I've said that, and that's the thing. So when you look at all these fighters, think about this. In the last 3 years, Ryan Garcia, Teofimo, and now Shakur have all announced retirements. Retirement. Okay? In other words, they started pouting and complaining.
Right. Millionaires, though. They're millionaires.
Yeah, and they all make a lot of money. None of them even have 30 fights. I don't understand what is the problem here. Mayweather had some issues with Arum. I covered some of those issues. He had problems with HBO, but the man went to work. Think about this. Before he got to De La Hoya, which launched him into the next phase of his career that many of us did not like, he was no worse than number 2 pound for pound. I think a lot of people had him number 1. He was a 4-division champion. He was undefeated, and he had a roster of really good victories. And back then, he was really entertaining. So when I would hear young fighters talk about, well, before I get to the money part, I got to get to the pretty boy part, I thought it was all just a lot of gibberish.
You mean the other way around before you get to the...
Well, yeah, before you get to the money, we got to do the pretty boy, right? And I've heard fighters say that. Ryan Garcia said it, Teofimo said it, and none of their actions match those words. That's the reality.
I mean, that's crazy because the pretty boy phase, we know what pretty boy Floyd did. And he was a very, very talented individual. What I don't like about today's boxing, and I want to see, can you elaborate on this? It do seem like a lot of these fighters are divas. And they want to be Money Mayweather, but they're skipping the pretty boy Floyd phase.
Yeah.
What say you about that?
Well, I think a lot of this is being enabled. And a lot of these kids make a lot of money. And they don't understand one thing, is they are enabled because of the potential that they have from a business standpoint. But a lot of them still are not big draws. Tank Davis is interesting, in a sense that he's actually kind of earned the right to be a twice-a-year fighter because bottom line is he's gone to 3 or 4 different major metropolitan cities, sold out or sold very well, and it's proven he's a pretty solid, consistent pay-per-view draw, especially if he has a really good dance partner. But what I don't understand about these young guys is they don't understand that you're in a niche sport where America does not take boxing as seriously as, let's say, Europe. And you think at a young age, at age 24 to 26, that you could fight so infrequently, yet you still want to make not just 7 figures, because they do make 7 figures. You start thinking you're worth 8 figures, and you've shown no ability. There's been actually no metric that says they're worth it. And now we have a situation, and I know this to be true, where Shakur Stevenson announced his retirement, which is going to probably end by later tonight. And because he did not want to sign a 5-fight extension with Top Rank, which guaranteed him a minimum. It's not the maximum. It's a minimum of 3 million fights for 5 fights after his last one. Now, coming off that last fight, Coach, and I know you've talked about it at length, I don't know how much leverage Shakur Stevenson has. I believe that Top Rank is thinking, you know what? If you want to go out there and test the free agent market, and you truly believe that we are lowballing you, go ahead and find out. And so there is a sense of entitlement that really does exist with this current crop of fighters, but I also think it's also because of the environment of this boxing business.
So I'm glad you said something about the business. It seems, now I could be wrong, but in your opinion, has like you talk about Shakur Stevenson, he turned down the extension. I think it was 5-fight, $15 million
minimum. Though remember, keep this in mind about a minimum contract. That means they can pay you more. People never understood about Terence Crawford's last deal with Top Rank. And this was very misreported, and a lot of people with dishonest agendas kept saying that Terence was not making good money. Me and you have talked about it, and I know you've done shows on it. People kept thinking Terence was only making $1 million or $2 million for those last 5-6 fights with Top Rank. His minimum was $3.5 million. Out of the last 6 fights, 5 of them, Top Rank actually paid him more, culminating in a $6 million payday against Shawn Porter, which was the last fight of his Top Rank deal. So the minimum is just a starting point, which means whether you fight Roberto Duran, Ray Leonard, Steve Kim, or Coach Malachi Williams, we're giving you $3 million. So, and I actually was surprised that Top Rank was going to re-sign him or offer him that deal at the same terms and for 5 fights. I was there at the De Los Santos fight, and I said, wow, this feels almost like a loss. It was not a great performance. People were walking out early. But Shakur does have some leverage. He draws well in Newark. He's an accomplished fighter, but he's got to understand that entertainment value matters to a certain degree, and he's going to have to put in some work before he can ever really get a Tank Davis or a Ryan Garcia to the table, because that's where the big money is for him. But for him to just say, well, I retire and quit, guess what, Coach? The game will move on with or without Shakur Stevenson. That is the harsh reality.
Yeah, the sport of boxing doesn't stop.
Nope.
This is the thing is this here. It seems today that it's so hard to get these guys like a Tank Davis. It seems like he has a cult-like following. But when I listen to Leonard Ellerbe on Twitter, one thing I will say, I will give Leonard Ellerbe credit. He says the same thing. well, it's about putting butts in seats. Tank sells tickets. And they're literally saying that we're not going to fight. This is my interpretation.
Yeah.
We're not fighting Shakur Stevenson. We're not going to try to make a fight with Devin Haney. Any of those guys in our weight division that could be tough because Tank is a draw by himself. He don't need those guys. Leonard Ellerbe has said this time and time again. Is that type of mentality keeping us from getting the type of fights that we want?
Look, this is about risk management. What's that old phrase in boxing? Risk versus reward. And the belief is that it's not only Tank. They've been doing this for years with various fighters. If you have a business, a guy that's a real franchise, that you're going to sell tickets, you're going to do some pay-per-view business, and there's a following, every fighter to a certain degree that's a big name has been protected or shielded to a certain degree. It's not just Tank Davis. This is not exclusive to him. But what they're saying is, in their own way, is like, man, we can get beat in those fights.
Yeah.
So we'd rather make this amount of money knowing that a Pitbull Cruz does not bring the type of threat, or a Ryan Garcia who brings us a lot more money. Because now it became risk and then the reward. But I just really think it's unfortunate because people have to understand one thing. This is allowed to happen as long as the public funds it. Once the public says, no, we're not buying into it, then there becomes a little bit more pressure on the promoters to make the fights people want.
Now that Showtime is out of the game, I did see the press conference with Keith Thurman and Tszyu. I'm not going to lie to you, Steve. I saw the podium. It was scratches on it, low budget. And a lot of people made mockery of BLK Prime when Crawford went over there, had that one fight, that one off.
Yeah.
And I'm like, dude, okay, well, this press conference looked very similar. Rolly Romero, the headliner. But not only that, Steve, what do you think about this fight with Tszyu, Keith Thurman, Rolly Romero, and Esau Cruz on the headline? They're going to make this is a pay-per-view fight.
Yeah. Let me just say this. Tszyu's one of the most improved fighters. I thought he should have actually been in the Fighter of the Year conversation.
Right.
3 solid opponents, got better each time. One of the very best 54-pounders in the world. He's come a long way from that Terrell Gaucher fight. I like watching him fight. He has very good management. They have a real plan out there. But this is a fact, and this is what I'm going to go by. I think Keith Thurman's only won 1 fight in the last 4 years.
That's true.
He has not fought in over 2 years. He's a career welterweight, moving up to junior middleweight. Here's another thing. He's never taken it well to the body. Tszyu actually has a very good left hook downstairs. This, to me, looks like a sacrifice. And I know some people are trying to hard sell Keith Thurman. Keith Thurman has not been that guy for a very long time. And in fact, when he was that guy, I always thought he was a tad overrated. Okay, but that's just my opinion. And I know certain people have an agenda to say that Keith Thurman is dangerous and don't count him out. You know what? I'll count him out. I think Tszyu dominates this fight. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. The other fight, Pitbull against Rolly. I was able to interview Oscar De La Hoya at the press conference that we were at yesterday, Coach. And De La Hoya gave a very interesting answer. He said, what is Rolly thinking? Why is Rolly taking less money with no guarantee on a platform that's very unproven? To me, this looks like a JV matchup, and it's all about platform protection. That the PBC/Al Heyman simply was not going to allow Rolly Romero go to the other side of the street to take a much bigger fight in terms of profile against Ryan Garcia, even at the own detriment of his client, who's probably going to make less money, right? Because they want to keep it in-house. And I'll be honest with you, if this was a card that was a doubleheader on Showtime, I think it'd do a really good number. But on pay-per-view at that price tag, I think you are asking to really fail here.
So what would be the purpose, Steve, of putting a fight like this on pay-per-view? Like Keith Thurman, I called Keith once upon a time Thurman. Like, dude, you haven't been that guy, like you said, in years. It seems like there's a new fan base now since he was last hot. And how do you sell this? Rolly is saying that, hey, I'm on a platform that's doing it has 200 million subscribers, and I'm gonna help blow them up. They're saying that, hey, because we're on Amazon Prime, and they have a lot of subscribers, that's going to translate it into us doing astronomical numbers on pay-per-view. What say you about that?
Well, that remains to be seen, but I will say this. The Amazon Prime NFL games on Thursday night, I don't see them talking about 50 million people watching, and that's the National Football League. That's kind of a big deal. Mm-hmm. NFL's kind of big, right? Bigger than boxing?
Absolutely.
In terms of here's what I found interesting, Coach. I was under the impression, along with a lot of other people, and I was just speculating. I don't have any sources there. I don't talk to those people, but I would have thought that to kick off this venture, you had to do two things. You either had to do the Spence Crawford rematch, even though I think the value of that rematch was really diminished because of the dominance of Terence Crawford back in July. And then it seems like Spence is not ready to fight physically. Fine. Then the other thing is, I think you had to lead off with Tank Davis. If there is a success story with the PBC in terms of successfully building homegrown star, it is him. I find it very strange that we're not hearing anything about Tank Davis until recently, that he might suddenly, even though certain junior welterweights are too big, fighting Conor Bennett 47. I don't know how that works out logically, but I thought, in my view, that you had to start off with a entity that everybody knew. As good as Tszyu is, and as improved as he is as a fighter, do you think the American public really knows who Tszyu is?
No, they don't really know who Tszyu is. And again, Tszyu, I think this fight, if you're going to do it, maybe do it in Australia. Because he's big over there,
yes,
but
he is.
No one really knows him over here. As it relates to Tank, I'm hearing all types of things. You have this Turki Alashik is saying they want to make that fight happen. We Twitter back and forth. If the PBC Al Heyman is an advisor, how does someone like the pivot over here, the Rolly Romero, he said he turned down the Ryan Garcia fight because he received a way better deal with the PBC with no guarantee and stuff like that. So if Al Heyman is your advisor, it seems like that he has some kind of grip. Do these fighters, can they make their own decisions and be like, no, I don't want to do that, I'm going to go over here?
They can, but it's hard to break away from the cult. Look, I took some heat from it, but I stand by it. Stephen Fulton made it very clear. Al, I'm taking this fight in Japan. It's by far the biggest money I'm ever going to make. And he went to Japan. Daniel Jacobs made a similar move years ago, and he benefited from it greatly. Fights against Golovkin, and certainly the fight against Canelo. But I think a lot of fighters, they have a sheep mentality. And they don't understand that they are actually the boss. You get a very finite amount of time for your physical prime to make money, to maximize your revenue. And I wonder how many fights, right? Think about this, Coach. We were there together watching it last year when you visited LA. Caleb Plant is now coming to a year since he fought.
Yes, yeah. I didn't even think about that.
When's he going to fight again? And has he asked? Has he actually raised his hand and say, Al, or if he can even reach him, when am I going? I got to make a living here. See, time waits for no man. Have you ever seen the hourglass when you turn it over?
Yeah, the same.
It goes to the bottom. You can't stop it. That's within our life. Time is very finite, and that's within a career. You could say, I'm saving wear and tear on my body, right? But at age 26 to about 29, or even early 30s, that youth cannot be replaced. Okay? You have to polish up, you have to sharpen that blade consistently and be out there. And here's the other thing. If I'm only fighting once every year, I'm never going to break through to the public. That's the reality. That's the other thing. There's a marketing aspect to this. And Caleb Plant tried his best, faded late against Benavidez, but I guarantee you a lot of the people that aren't like me or you, they have forgotten who he is. So it's this perpetual cycle. Either you're ring rust or you're unknown and you're not sharp, and then you're going to go back to having a layoff. So look, a lot of the PBC fighters, I've called it the PB cult in the past. I think a lot of that still remains.
But this is the thing, right? From what I'm hearing, Al Heyman has a lot of fighters. He has over 200 or whatever.
Right.
And if you hear this rumor online from a lot of these guys that's in the cult, well, I don't hear nobody complaining. Everybody doing well over there.
Allowed to.
And this is the thing. You say they're not allowed to.
They're not. There's disparagement clauses in the contract. But I'll just say this. They know that they're not allowed to say a lot. Because the problem is, let's say you do complain. You know what they're going to do? They're just going to bench you longer. I mean, it's a tough situation. It's like being in a relationship that damned if you do, damned if you don't. But But just because the fighters are not complaining, okay, number one, a lot of them, one thing I've known about fighters, a lot of them are not as tough outside the ring as they are inside the ring. Yeah. Number two, they may be afraid to speak out because there may be punitive actions against them. And number three, I've heard for years that there are disparagement clauses inserted in the contract where guys can't say anything. But I do find it interesting now, guys like Subriel Matias are breaking away.
Yeah, I mean, we're hearing that he's signing with Matchroom. The one thing I do like about that move, he's going to be a lot more active. Yeah. As it relates to Shakur Stevenson, to pivot back to him, if he don't re-sign with Top Rank, what are his options? Like, what does he think his market value is at this point?
We're going to find out. I'm actually curious to see what happens if his relationship with Top Rank ends and now you're a free agent. Is he A-Rod, Alex Rodriguez in 2001? Is he going to get one of the great deals of all time? We'll see. Look, this is what he has going for him. Very skilled, very talented, draws well in Newark, has done really good television numbers for ESPN. So he's gotten to that plateau. But now he's going to need somebody. He has to entice one of these other big names to get inside the ring with him. That last fight did a lot of damage. And I know that internally at Top Rank that there was a thought like, wow, is this worth moving on forward with?
You mean like break the bank?
Right.
Want to break the bank
I mean, because you know that he has an expectation. And he's been a twice-a-year fighter for at least 4 years. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if, as talented as he is, if his skill set is fully developed, I still think he needed more at-bats. But it is what it is, because they don't go backwards on the money. I know that camp has said that ad nauseum. But I want to see, is this going to be a dose of reality to Shakur Stevenson that I may think I'm the best fighter in the world? But Larry Merchant told me this, and he taught me this lesson years ago. He said, Steve, you can be a greater, more talented singer than Garth Brooks, but that doesn't make you the biggest star. There's a difference.
Top Rank, explain to me their business model, because I've done a show on this before, and I said, well, if you look at Top Rank's history, their company is not predicated upon pandering to one superstar that's on their team, that's with their promotional company. They have a certain business model that they do, and fighters can come and go, but that company is still going to be around and effective. What say you about that? Someone like a star like a Shakur. You had Floyd Mayweather had like 35 fights with Top Rank, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, he did.
You know, Manny Pacquiao went through there. All of these guys
are Morales, Miguel Cotto, Kelly Pavlik. You know what they do is there's an old saying, I think of Jack London. The strength of the wolf is the pack, and the strength of the pack is the wolf. It's like they want to develop stars, but they're never going to be reliant on one star. And it's like a conveyor belt. As you come through their system, like Nonito Donaire, Miguel Cotto, a lot of the names that I named, and eventually as they become so big that they seek greener pastures, guess what? There's another star coming through. An Abdullah Mason. Yeah. A Keyshawn Davis, maybe, right? Raymond Murataya. So they always have a consistent flow of talent. And their strength is being able to identify talent and then nurturing that talent, developing that talent, and then promoting it. And I always find it strange. Like, these are business people. They're not asking people not to get paid. They're just saying, we're going to have a disciplined mindset that we're going to pay you what you think you are worth. We're going to live to the letter of the law of the contract. And if you leave, you leave. You know, Manny Pacquiao finished out his career without Top Rank, as did Miguel Cotto. And other fighters have too. But there's also a lot of other fighters that'll tell you that their best time was with that company. But people, I think there are certain people that simply will not give them credit for what they do. There's a reason why Bob Arum has been effective and a major player in this business for at least 4.5, 5 decades.
What do you think about Teofimo Lopez? I know that he's fighting Jermaine Ortiz, but you know, Teo says a lot. Say they want to fight Terence Crawford, this and that. I don't think that's a reality, to be fair. To me, it seems that he just uses other people's names to sell his fight. We haven't heard much about Jermaine Ortiz. He doesn't really talk about him. But what say you about how do you the trajectory of Teofimo Lopez?
I would describe Teofimo, who I was probably on earlier than anybody. From his second, third fight on, I saw special talent. Me and Mario had him in studio when he was still a prospect, him and his father. We helped blow that up. I'll take a lot of credit for it. But He's talented but temperamental. And it's all that other stuff he hasn't mastered. Every time he sees prosperity, he creates his own adversity. Like beating Lomachenko, what's he do? Goes to war with Top Rank, goes to the purse bid, goes with Triller, wastes a year of his career, and then he loses to Kambosos. That's on nobody but himself. Look at last year. He beats Josh Taylor in a spectacular performance. What's he do 5 days after? He announces a retirement. That's on nobody but him. And he wants to know why he's not a bigger star and why he's not getting more money. Well, Teo, you don't fight enough, and then you quit boxing for a while, and you only fought once at the age of 25. That's an incredible waste of a prime year when you had all the momentum. But in terms of ability, he's elite. In terms of the ability to be a showman and to be an entertainer, he's one of the very best, period. Because when he's on top of his game, he's not just good, he's good to watch.
Yeah, he is.
But this is going to be the mark. What we're going to see tonight, I don't know when this interview is going to go up, but what do the really great fighters do, Coach? The elite ones. You know what they do? They beat all the very good ones. In other words, if you're a 10, you take care of the 7s and 8s. That's what the elite fighters do.
Marvin Hagler was a perfect example.
Right. But look, all the great fighters that you can name the last 30 years, they didn't have a lot of bad nights like he did with Kambosos. Like, say they want to keep acting like that fight never happened, and then they make a bunch of excuses. Time out. You wanted that money. You stepped in that ring. You have to deal with that result. It's a part of your legacy.
Teofimo, to me, it seems like, and I think I heard an interview with maybe Marcos Vegas. He feel that he's looking at Tank Davis, the type of money he's making, Ryan Garcia, the people, I guess, in his group, his age group or whatever, his contemporaries, so to speak, and he feels that he's undervalued. Top Rank is not paying him. He should be making the type of money that they're making. Why? Where's the flaw in his logic in that?
Well, because again, he is mistaking ability for marketability. I'm just telling you. I actually think Teofimo is better than all these guys at the top of his game when he's sharp, when he's happy. But this is a fact. His last fight against Josh Taylor was not in the big room at the Madison Square Garden. It was at the theater. So he fought in front of less than 5,000 people, right? The loss to Kambosos really hurt his value, set him back. I'll never forget, after they beat Loma, when I was still really friendly with them, I told the father, I told Junior, that's what we call him, Junior, look, that's a great win over Loma. Don't think you're a star yet. This is a great platform that you launched yourself on. You got a head start. If I were you in that next year, 2021, I'd tell Top Rank, give me 4 or 5 fights. Let's do what De La Hoya did in 97. Get out there, and now you could build the momentum. What did they do? They wasted a whole year chasing Triller money. It's not on the business. They decided to do that. They went that route, and they have to live with it. Teo has a disadvantage in a sense that the other guys are either Black American or they're Mexican American, right? So ethnically and culturally, you have a built-in base. He's Honduran, so it's a little bit different, right? So he had to build a little bit more and put more work into it to create an organic fan base. Okay? I don't think anyone's ever really told him the truth, including his own management. All they've done is enable a lot of bad decisions. But what I'm hearing from people at Top Rank is like, hey, Steve, this will be probably 1 of 3 fights this year. He does that and just keeps stacking chips. You're going to get to someplace. Because I remember when Mayweather was this young fighter, and he was so, envious of Prince Ahmed making a lot more money than him on HBO.
I remember that.
Or being second banana to De La Hoya, even though he even felt as a young kid, I'm better than De La Hoya right now. But he had to work at it. He put in 37 fights and then became the most lucrative fighter in the world. And you know how long that took him? 11 years, Coach. So this whole notion that I'm just going to retire because I'm having a bad day and I want people to feel sorry for me in your 5th year as a pro, no one's listening to that.
What say you about we know Teofimo was saying he want to fight Terence Crawford. I don't think that's reality. Okay. But we saw Crawford last night. I saw him last night. But the thing is Terence Crawford and Errol Spence. We hear that fight is not going down. Now I don't know who Crawford is going to fight next. I did speak to Bomac. He said they're working on some things.
Yeah, I spoke to Bomac yesterday too. Last night going through the casino. They are hoping to get a fight sometime this year. They're not going to just look. The plan is for them, and again, this may not work out. They're not just going to wait for Canelo and hope they get the fight by September. They want to fight in between, which I think is prudent. But here's the thing: the Crawford-Teofimo fight, I'd watch it. It's a really good matchup of two of the top 10 fighters in the world. But I wonder, do you think Top Rank and Bob Arum want to go out there knowing that pay-per-view may not do as much as they think it will do?
Right.
And do you think they really want to put up a large guarantee for Terence Crawford, who just recently... I mean, it was kind of a bitter divorce. Let's be honest about it. So the politics there don't seem to really iron out. And my view is this with Teo. Forget about just focusing in on one name. Just keep fighting and being consistent. Build up your base. You'll get there. But you quitting after every fight or doing some wacky thing, it doesn't help this cause. It doesn't.
What are you hearing about Canelo Alvarez? I'm seeing rumors on Twitter that, hey, because the PBC, Rick Glaser did say that the PBC wasn't getting an annual budget from Amazon. So now the PBC has to foot the bill in order to put up the money for their fights. But I'm hearing that, I don't know how true this is, Steve, so I just want to know what you're hearing. Canelo was like, okay, well, who's going to foot my guarantee for my next fight? Where's that money coming from?
I'll just say this for all these people who doubt Rick Glaser. I find him to be very accurate on most things, including this. So for all those people that don't like Rick Glaser, want to deride him or doubt him, go ahead. His track record speaks for itself. And when it comes to that particular subject, I've had conversations where people have confirmed those thoughts of Mr. Glaser.
He was spot on because I remember when he said Showtime was going out of business, this is going to be the last year. Everyone attacked him. Yeah. Oh, you hating this and that. Come to find out, Showtime folded like a lawn chair, and those same people, they mouth is closed.
I know one thing about Rick. He's in the business. Yeah. He's in the business. He talks to people on a daily basis. He's passionate about it. He really cares. And look, it's like anybody else. I don't agree with everything he says. Neither do you.
Right.
But it is what it is. But to say that he is not knowledgeable and that he's not connected or sourced, I would really strongly disagree with that.
So what does someone like a Canelo, because I'm pretty sure these fighters are hearing the same thing. I'm pretty sure Errol Spence is hearing this. Who is Spence going to fight next? Or when is he going to fight? What does someone like a Canelo does next? Like, okay, where's my money going to come from? Floyd Mayweather says he has investments where he's making $300 million a month. I have the video where he said it. Yeah, he's investing in skyscrapers and he have $20 million watches. Why won't...
don't forget the gel blaster. Love the gel blaster.
Why won't Floyd put his money up? He has a plethora of money.
You mean like be a real promoter? Huh.
Yeah, why he won't put his money up?
There's a thing called Mayweather Promotion. Whatever happened to them, by the way? Haven't done a show at Sam's Town in a while.
Well, Leonard Ellerbe. Leonard Ellerbe is CEO. Yeah. But my thing is, why they're making a whole lot of money from what they were saying. We did astronomical numbers, is what Leonard Ellerbe says. We set so many records. Stephen F. Most was saying that last year, and then Showtime folds. So I'm like, if you guys were so successful and you made so much money, why you can't fund your own fights, big money fights?
That's a very good question. I don't think we'll ever have it answered, but that's a very good question. And it is interesting because that's another thing. Going back. If you're Amazon Prime or you're PBC and you want to make a splash, I would have just said, all right, let's just wait for Canelo then. Seriously. I just would have waited for Canelo. I mean, what is the difference between waiting March 30th to May 5th or whatever that Cinco de Mayo? It's 5 weeks, isn't it, Coach?
It's 5 weeks.
What is the difference?
But this is the thing, though, Steve. This is so strange. It's been 2 months went by. We're going on to the end of the third month, in March 30th. No one from the PBC is having a fight. So all of these fighters. So like, what do these fighters do if you're dependent upon the PBC and you're not going to have they're not going to announce the first fight card until March the 30th. Like, what do they do?
Are actually taking fights with other smaller promoters.
Okay.
Like Mark McSayo did so recently in Long Beach.
Okay.
So some of them are going that, but I wonder how many of them are willing to do that. I wonder how many of them are willing to take a haircut financially just for the activity's sake. Just like actually think long term. Because so many fighters and managers, and again, I don't necessarily blame them, but they want to go to the letter of the law in terms of their contract minimum. They won't fight for a nickel less. I'm thinking, yeah, but what if the other option is you don't fight for another 8 months, right?
You're losing money.
You're also losing skill.
Right.
You're losing time. You're losing the ability to get better. So that's a very interesting one. I thought it was interesting that they only announced one show March 30th. Because generally, you always announce, like, hey, we're having a show March 30th, April 25th, May 7th, and so on.
Schedule.
So now you kind of schedule it out. So as of right now, we know about March 30th. And again, I'm not the guy to ask because I don't talk to those people. They don't talk to me either, to be honest. So I'm just kind of waiting like everyone else. But I am curious, is that what do the other 120, 150 fighters who are not on March 30th, what are they being told? Because I'll send you a text when I'm off. But there's a legitimate contender in a really good division that had fought on PBC the last couple of years. And I'll show you, when we get off the air, I will show you this text. The manager's sick of it, and he says, we're out of there. A guy that's been on TV, and a guy that's a very good fighter, very exciting, and can win a world title, who has said, Steve, I'm sick of getting jerked around. I'm out of here. We're out of here. So,
What do you think about Turki Alashik? He's saying that he wants to put on, this is what I'm hearing now, he wants to put on, of course, Gervonta Davis and Devin Haney fight, but we saw what was going on Twitter with Tank.
yeah.
And then now I'm hearing about he wants to put on the Canelo, put the money up for the Canelo and the Crawford fight.
Well,
is there any validity to that?
Turki Alashik is a boxing fan. He's not just a suit or a powerful man with money that wants to dabble in boxing. I was actually very impressed when he did that interview with Ade Odolipo. And they asked him, who's your favorite fighter? Now, everyone always says Tyson or Ray Leonard, right? Someone famous. Or really like De La Hoya or Pacquiao. I love the fact he said Larry Holmes and Duran. And I was like,
yeah.
You know what?
Yeah.
You're actually a real fan. Because, honestly, you kind of have to be like a hardcore guy to appreciate, especially Larry Holmes.
Larry Holmes, yeah.
And
best jab in boxing.
And he actually said, I'm a fan. I'm a fan first. And there's a variable in a sense. I think I got health issues. I'm not going to be around forever. I want to see certain fights. They've made it clear. I've been told this, and Bob Arum confirmed it on a recent episode of 3 Knockdown Rule. They want to do 6 big events per year with the Riyadh season in Saudi Arabia. So they're not going to get every fight. They're going to get certain key fights, like a better BF ball, which otherwise could not be made in America because of the financing involved to bring both sides together. So this whole notion that somehow they're going to ruin everything in America, it's not true. And by the way, the American boxing scene has let itself down. They allowed this to happen. They did for years. They neglected the sport in so many different ways that they allowed this to happen. But I believe that His Excellency is a guy that's going to help bridge the gap for a lot of important fights to happen. And look, boxing has been going to where the money is for years. And I really laugh at all these people on social media that talk about these fights all need to be in American. Really, like the Thrilla in Manila, like the Rumble in the Jungle, like Tyson Douglas in Tokyo. These people are either dishonest or they're not very intelligent about the subject matter. The bottom line is, and Lenny Merchant told me this years ago, Steve, they always go where the most money is. Okay, so for years you've been going to Indian casinos, you've been going to the Silver Dome where fights didn't belong. Now all of a sudden we want to play location police. Get out of here with that. I'm not hearing it.
It's amazing you say something about social media because it seems like there's a social media, I want to say like civil war going on. Boxing fans online, social media, and they seem to be celebrity worshipers.
They are. They're jocksniffers.
They idolize these fighters. They
No
make
doubt.
them deities. And I've seen situations where, guys get threatened like myself and others. In these, like, just imagine being so emotionally invested in a fighter that's a multimillionaire who don't even know that you exist. And you're threatening someone willing to, quote unquote, throw it all away, which they won't.
They got shooters.
But they got shooters and this and that over multimillionaires who don't even know they exist. And it seems like this is where we at right now. What do you think about the social media aspect of it?
Well, look, I've kind of been at the center of the storm a lot of times because I didn't worship Floyd Mayweather to the degree that others did. I was critical of Al Heyman, and that's the other thing. They really love Al Heyman. That they look at him as a godlike figure in a lot of ways. But I do find it, but that's part and parcel with the celebrity culture and the jock sniffing nature of a lot of public. Like we were talking about it with Jason Whitlock, this fascination and it's almost like religious zeal a lot of fans will have over Taylor Swift. I've never listened to a Taylor Swift song. Couldn't name you one. Right?
What about Beyonce?
Beyond, yeah, that the whole Bayhive.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow, this is really interesting. But yes, a lot of these individuals look for fulfillment in living through vicariously celebrities, athletes, and in this case, specifically boxers. I mean, the psychological meltdowns that took place over Spence Crawford, I can't lie. I enjoyed it, though. I enjoyed it because these people really thought that this was going to be their crowning achievement. And to see it come crumbling down, and then I'll always be thankful to Terence Crawford because he brought me so much entertainment. I'm not going to lie to you, Coach. When that night happened, I watched so many reaction videos of live, when people were watching the fight live.
Right.
And they're like, oh, man, we're going to, and as soon as the second round knockdown happened, these people, it's like their lives left their body. I can't lie. I'm petty. I enjoyed all of it.
Terence Crawford, to me, I feel like he broke the bank. It's like he broke the PBC back with that. It was so much riding on this Errol Spence fight. Even though they didn't want to make it, I spoke to Crawford. He explained to me how that deal went down. He had to go talk to Errol Spence. Yep. Al Heyman was blocking it, giving him the run around, but it happened. So it's like once that fight was made, a lot of the Spence has a cult-like following online.
Well, Coach, here's the difference. I never thought anything could reach the fervor of Wilder's loss against Fury.
That was bad.
The second fight, right? Here's the difference, though. Spence was more highly regarded than Wilder. Like, Wilder was always known as the most dangerous, exciting heavyweight. These people really thought that Spence was the best fighter in the world pound for pound, right? So they really actually thought, okay, Wilder, we got as far as we can with this, but Errol's going to take us to the mountaintop. And this is the irony, there's no group of fans that slandered Terence Crawford more than that group of fans who said that they are pro-black.
That's right.
Nobody made it more racial and said more slurs against Terence Crawford than they did. That's the truth. I used to get into a lot of trouble because I used to see what Terence went through. And they said, well, Terence be working for the white man. Yeah. And I was like, okay, a lot of people do. And I tweeted this more than once. I said, for all those people saying that, I have a question. Put up your paycheck stub and let's see who you work for.
Not only that.
I mean, the hypocrisy there was just deep. And I don't even think they understood their own hypocrisy.
Not only that, but, the company who you're pro PBC, Al Heyman, he got money from the same white man that you're talking about.
Yeah.
So like they're not funding their fights. They're getting their money from the white networks. So it's like, it's selective outrage. You can't be, and I say this time and time again, you can't be pro-black in one breath, but you're tearing down other black fighters. You call this guy Top Rank Toby. You call him a slave. Bob Arum is his master. And it was really uncalled for.
Well, the stuff that Bomac went through. I hadn't spoken to Bomac in a very long time, and I said, hey, Bomac, I'm really happy for you. And we joked about, that famous clip where he comes into the locker room after the fight with that WBC trainer's belt, and he said, yeah, and I've never seen, and he said, Steve, that was a release of emotion.
Yeah.
Because they started talking very, very greasy and bad about Bomac. It had nothing to do with boxing.
Right.
Started making fun of a lot of different things. And when we spoke to Terence, me and Mario, that agitated Terence.
Yeah.
I know one thing about Terence. He listens and hears everything. Okay? He does.
Either him or TT or...
Yeah. And that was part of that motivation. But I've said this for a while. It's just boxing. This is not that important. Life will go on no matter who wins or loses a fight. I don't really get emotionally connected to any fighters or fights anymore for the most part. I really don't. My job is going to be there regardless whoever wins a fight or not. My job is to tell the truth. And no matter what happens, my job is to tell it like it is. So no matter what happens tonight, whether Teofimo Lopez looks spectacular or whether Jermaine Ortiz pulls off the big upset, it's not going to really impact me. It's just going to impact the work that me and you create as content creators in our realm. And our job is just to be honest about it. That's it. So that's why when I hear these fans get so unhinged over an opinion that you'll state or I'll state, I always say to myself, wow, is it really that important?
And it's like you said, it's just boxing at the end of the day. Life is going to go on. Someone has to win, someone has to lose. You know, Crawford beat Spence. It is what it is. It's over with. Those same people who don't like him, some of them are trying to like him now, but they still don't like him. So it's like you got to let it go. One more thing to wrap up. You've been watching boxing a long time, Steve. And I remember, and I say this time and time again, I've never made a decision to watch a fight based on which promotional company the fighter is with. If you ain't down with Don King Promotions, then F Top Rank and vice versa. And it's like, it seems like online is just so cliquish. These guys have an emotional investment into promotional companies, networks. Why is that in today's time when it wasn't like that?
It's the tribalism. Yeah. It really is. And it kind of reminds me, I guarantee you there's probably people out there that said, oh man, I'm only going to buy Death Row records. Bad Boy. I'm not doing Bad Boy. I'm just doing Death Row. And they probably got into that East Coast, West Coast beef. And they probably really took it seriously, right?
Right.
From the time that I watched boxing, this is when Don King was at his apex in like the mid to late 80s. And he always did kind of the bigger shows, and then Arum would do a lot of big shows, but King did the extravaganzas, right?
Right.
And then obviously Arum has had a much better finish to his run. But you're right. It never really impacted me who was the promoter, because many times I didn't know. I was a young kid. Didn't really care if it was on CBS, ABC, NBC, USA, ESPN, or pay-per-view. It didn't really matter. But as you have said many times before, there are people out there that have made Al Heyman and PBC into this cultural touchstone or an icon, or what you call the civil rights movement of boxing.
Right.
And I'm like, oh, you can take it that way. I don't. And with that said, I don't have to agree with you. See, too many people think that, and they throw tantrums over this, is that if you don't agree with me, I'm just going to call you racist. And I've said, go right ahead. I'm not like a lot of these guys. I'll stand firm on whatever I say. It's not going to impact me. It really isn't. But the fact that they made this more than what it is, which is just boxing, and boxing is really just sport. Boxing is really just business dressed up as a sport. That's all it is. People have to realize that. But when you have people out there who look towards sports and entertainment and has this influence as the ability to actually drive their mood, I think that's not only scary, I think that's sad.
It is very sad. Before we end the interview, Steve, do you have any parting words to just the boxing fans in general?
One bit of advice. If you want to be happier as a boxing fan, and I've said this on other shows like BDA Boxing, and I've said this to Jules, Ring IQ, shout out to all of them. Watch what you want to watch. You don't have to watch all the boxing. Maybe I do because in theory, I cover it. So maybe I do. But many of you fans out there, when you go to a Baskin Robbins, there's 31 flavors. Don't you guys always get the flavors you want? You don't try all 31 flavors. Or when you get a pizza, you only get the toppings you like, and nobody gets anchovies. So if you want to be a happier boxing fan, watch what you want, support what you like, and the other stuff, just learn to live without it, and you'll have a lot more time, and I think you'll be more or less satisfied. This whole notion that somehow, as boxing fans, you have to support everything, completely disagree. I do not agree with that thought process. I don't even think it's realistic. And look, if you want to be the type of person that says, I'm not going to ever watch a Bob Arum show, you know what? That's your right, too. I can't be hypocritical about it. I think you're going to miss out on some of the best fights in the world. Because, you know what? If I didn't watch PBC, guess what? I'd actually miss out on a lot of good fights there, too. I can admit that. But I do believe that boxing fans support the sport. Support what you want. Support when you want to support it. And have fun with the sport. It's not that important. But it's a form of entertainment. And that's it.
Let everybody know how to get in contact with you, what you got going on with the Three Knockdown Rule podcast and stuff like that.
Yeah, well, me and Mario Lopez, yes, that one. We do the 3 Knockdown Rule weekly show. Get it on YouTube and all the podcast platforms. It's the number 3 Knockdown Rule. And then I also do a lot of weekly or daily segments or a couple times a week with Jason Whitlock on Fearless. And then also on social media, Steve Kim 323 on Twitter and Steve Orale Kim on Instagram.
All right, thank you so much, Steve, for the interview.
Thanks,
I appreciate
guys.
it, brother.
Man, I'm out of here, bro. Let's go.